Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and finding your fridge empty. No milk, no snacks, no pre-cut fruit or instant anything. Now imagine that every bite you eat this week must come from a world where there's no electricity, no plastic packaging, no grocery stores, just the raw, brutal reality of medieval food. This isn't a reenactment. It's survival. For the next 7 days, your menu is limited to what a 14th century peasant might have had. Coarse rye bread, watery ale, foraged greens, maybe a scrap of salted fish. You won't be counting calories. You'll be chasing them. Every meal demands effort. Every mistake has consequences. In a time when food wasn't a convenience, but a commitment, survival hinged on the ability to plan, preserve, and endure. This isn't just about eating differently. It's about thinking differently. Because the real hunger here isn't just in your stomach. It's in the question, could you actually survive this? Let's begin where comfort ends and rediscover what food meant when it was earned, not delivered. What did they really eat? Forget the overflowing banquet tables you've seen in medieval movies, the roasted swans, blazed pies, and golden goblets. That was the food of kings, and even they didn't eat like that every day. For the average villager or peasant, meals were less about feasting and more about fueling survival. Their daily diet was brutally repetitive. The foundation? Bread, but not the fluffy white loaves we know today. This was coarse, dark rye bread or barley, dense enough to double as a tool and hard enough to survive days in a sack. Alongside it came potage, a kind of perpetual stew made from boiling grains with whatever vegetables could be grown or found, leeks, onions, cabbage, or turnips. Protein was scarce. Dried beans and the occasional bit of cheese were staples. A salted herring, if available, was a luxury. Sugar? Almost non-existent. Spices? Reserved for the wealthy. Meat? Rare and often questionable. For flavor, they relied on garlic, wild herbs, or the smoky tang of cooking over open fires. And drinks? Water could be dangerous, so weak ale, barely alcoholic, was the default beverage for all, even children. Here's the surprising twist. This wasn't a bad diet nutritionally. It was low in sugar, high in fiber, and mostly plant-based. A modern dietitian's dream, if you ignore the monotony and malnutrition risks in bad harvest years. But here lies the emotional conflict. We romanticize simple living until we're faced with eating the same bowl of lukewarm stew day after day without salt, snacks, or sweet relief. What medieval food lacked in pleasure, it made up for in predictability. Yet that predictability came at a cost one will soon feel. The effort behind every meal. In the medieval world, food didn't come from a fridge. It came from your body's exhaustion. Before a single bite touched your lips, it demanded hours of labor, physical, repetitive, and often punishing. To eat bread, you didn't just buy flour. You harvested grain in hand. You threshed it. You winnowed it. Then came grinding, usually with a heavy stone quern, a task so brutal it wore grooves into the floorboards beneath generations of kneeling women. Baking required firewood, chopped and stacked, then a clay oven stoked to unpredictable temperatures. Water? No taps. You hauled it, bucket by bucket, from streams or wells, sometimes miles away. Cooking meant maintaining a smoky fire, tending bubbling pots for hours, and praying it didn't scorch or spill. Want soup? First, forage for wild onions, leeks, or nettles. Want flavor? Learn which herbs won't poison you. There were no leftovers unless you planned for them, and no guarantees unless you worked for them. The very act of eating was a full-body commitment every day. Compare that to today. Pre-washed green, microwave buttons, food delivered in minutes. Our calories cost money. Theirs cost time, sweat, and sometimes skin. This wasn't about diet choices. It was about survival math. You had to earn more energy than you spent. Every meal was a gamble of input versus output. Get it wrong, and you didn't just go hungry. You got weaker, slower, more vulnerable. And so every bite in the medieval world came seasoned not with salt, but with sacrifice.
You've worked the fields from sunrise to sunset. You've foraged, fetched water, and kept the fire alive. But now, as you sit down to eat, the reality hits. There's simply not enough food. In the medieval world, hunger wasn't an emergency. It was a season, especially in late winter and early spring, known as the hungry gap. Stored grains ran low, vegetables hadn't sprouted, and hunting offered slim pickings. Even after all the toil, the calories just didn't add up. You burned more than you consumed. Your hands stayed busy, but your stomach stayed hollow. And this wasn't a rare crisis. It was an annual rhythm. Imagine dragging your aching body to grind more grain when your last piece of bread was yesterday. Imagine splitting firewood with trembling arms. Now add cold, damp weather. Add illness. Add children to feed first. This wasn't starvation in dramatic Hollywood terms. It was slow, grinding depletion. Muscle faded, focus dulled, disease crept in. And through it all, you kept moving, because stopping wasn't an option. For modern viewers, this reality cuts deep. We live in a world where food is everywhere, but our bodies have grown soft to scarcity. Our survival depends on systems, supermarkets, logistics chains, plastic-wrapped abundance. But remove those, and what's left? In the medieval world, hunger wasn't a sign of failure. It was the cost of living on the edge, year after year.
How medieval food changes your body. By day 3 on a medieval diet, your stomach starts to revolt, not from toxins, but from shock. Gone are the sugars, emulsifiers, caffeine, and preservatives your body quietly relied on. In their place, hard bread, fermented drinks, root vegetables, and fiber. So much fiber. Surprisingly, some systems improve. Your gut bacteria thrive on the unprocessed, whole food diet. Fermented ale and aged cheese act like probiotics. Your blood sugar stabilizes. Your palate adjusts. There's no crash because there's no spike. But this isn't a wellness cleanse. It's a survival diet. And it comes at a cost. Without citrus, scurvy lurks. Without diversity, nutrient gaps widen. Your protein intake is dangerously low. Iron and B12 scarce. Your body burns through reserves, and the energy deficit grows. Then there's the invisible threat: moldy grains, contaminated water, spoiled fats. Ergot fungus, common on rye, could trigger hallucinations or even death. Food safety wasn't a label, it was a gamble. The deeper truth: natural isn't always safe. Simplicity isn't always health. In the medieval world, your food could nourish you or slowly poison you, and you wouldn't know until it was too late. This is where the romantic fantasy of ancestral eating collides with hard biology. Yes, there were benefits, but there were brutal risks too. And the strangest part? Your body might begin adapting just as your cravings for the modern world grow louder. The risk on your plate. In the medieval kitchen, survival wasn't just about finding food. It was about deciding whether to trust it. Because sometimes the biggest danger wasn't hunger. It was what hunger forced you to eat. Rye bread, the cornerstone of the poor man's diet, held a dark secret. In damp conditions common in medieval Europe, it became the perfect breeding ground for ergot, a toxic fungus. Eat too much of it, and your fingers might burn, your limbs convulse, your mind spiral into hallucinations. Entire villages fell into madness, mistaking sickness for sorcery. Meat, when available, was a ticking clock. Without refrigeration, spoilage began almost immediately. The rich masked rot with imported spices. The poor masked it with desperation. Smell, ignored. Texture, irrelevant. When calories were scarce, danger became dinner. And cheese, sometimes a treasure, sometimes a trap, aged in unregulated conditions, riddled with bacteria. It could either strengthen your gut or shut it down. Contrast this with today's world of expiration dates, barcodes, and chemical preservatives. We panic at a yogurt 1 day past due. We toss lettuce for a brown spot. But in the medieval world, there were no guarantees, only guesses. Would you eat bread with strange purple flecks, cheese with a pungent sting, meat that's a day too soft? If you were starving, you probably would. This was the medieval dinner table, not a meal, but a wager. And still, they sat down every day because they had to. The rhythm of medieval eating. In the medieval world, eating followed a rhythm, not one of routine comfort, but of extremes. 1 week you might go to bed gnawing on dry bread and bitter turnips. The next, you're feasting on roasted meat, honey cakes, and ale that flows like water. These weren't random indulgences. They were the long-awaited feast days, anchored in religion and survival. The church calendar dictated dozens of fasts a year. On these days, meat, dairy, and even eggs were banned. For weeks, entire villages lived on boiled grains, greens, and whatever was left in storage. Hunger was ritualized, suffering seen as spiritual strength. But when a saint's day arrived or the harvest came in, the tables turned. Villagers gorged themselves on rich stews, fresh bread, and meat rare enough to feel holy. These feasts weren't just meals. They were communal catharsis, moments of joy earned through shared hardship. The contrast shaped not just metabolism, but mindset. Fasting sharpened gratitude. Feasting deepened connection. Children remembered which years were lean and which were legendary. Now look at today, a world of 24/7 availability. We snack without hunger. We waste without guilt. Food has become background noise, abundant but forgettable. In medieval life, deprivation gave food its meaning. Every bite carried memory. Every feast carried legacy. And the hunger between made the joy real. The body adapted. The community bonded. Gratitude wasn't a practice, it was a necessity. Emotional survival, craving, comfort, and cultural memory. Food isn't just nourishment, it's nostalgia, identity, and emotional armor. A warm bowl of soup when you're sick, a late-night snack after a hard day, a slice of cake on your birthday. These are rituals of comfort woven into our modern lives. Now strip that all away. In the medieval world, food didn't soothe you, it sustained you. There were no treats for stress, no sweet bites to reward a long day, no novelty to chase when boredom crept in. Meals were predictable, bland and repetitive, and for most, entirely joyless. Comfort food simply didn't exist. There was no chocolate, no coffee, no sugar in your tea, because there was no tea. No snacks between meals, because the concept of between meals didn't exist. Cravings didn't lead to indulgence. They led to frustration, or worse, to nothing at all. This wasn't just a physical test. It was an emotional attrition. Without variety, food lost its sparkle. Without abundance, it lost its promise. Eating became mechanical, a means to keep moving. And yet, over time, something else emerged. Gratitude. In a world stripped of indulgence, even a warm bowl of thick pottage could feel profound. Flavors became stronger when they were rare. Hunger made everything meaningful. But could we survive this emotional vacuum? We who are used to drive-thrus and dessert menus, endless options and instant gratification? The modern mind is hooked on stimulation. Salty, sweet, creamy, crunchy. Take that away, and meals begin to feel like punishment. And the deeper hunger sets in, not for calories, but for comfort. This is where survival breaks from the physical and enters the psychological. The body may adapt, but the spirit, that's another challenge altogether. What you lose and what you gain. 7 days have passed. No packaged food, no caffeine, no sugar rush, just rough bread, bitter greens, boiled roots, and thin ale. You've eaten what medieval villagers ate and felt what they felt, not just in your stomach, but in your bones. You've likely lost weight. Your body feels lighter, but weaker. Your energy dips unpredictably. Tasks you once did without thought, walking upstairs, carrying water, chopping wood, now leave you winded. Food no longer excites you. It simply functions. But then something strange happens. Your gut feels calmer, cleaner. The constant inflammation you didn't even know you had is gone. You begin waking up earlier, not from caffeine, but from your body's natural rhythm. The mental fog lifts, not dramatically, but subtly. A new kind of clarity emerges from the simplicity. Emotionally, it's humbling. You start to see food not as pleasure, but as a privilege. You look at a crust of bread and remember the grinding, the hauling, the heat. You feel connected to ancestors who endured this not for a week, but for a lifetime. They didn't have the option to quit, and somehow they survived. You begin asking a different question. Not, did I like it? But was I capable? Could I truly carry their burden? Could I survive if systems failed? The answer isn't clear, and that uncertainty is unsettling. But that's the gift of hardship. It reveals dependency. It exposes how fragile our comfort really is. Convenience has shielded us, but also softened us. What you lose in ease, you gain in awareness. This isn't just about food. It's about control, resilience, and respect for the past and for your own potential. What this teaches us now: food is the one thread woven through every human story. But after a week on a medieval diet, one thing becomes clear. Food isn't just about eating. It's the foundation of civilization and the mirror of its strength or its fragility. In the medieval world, food was local by necessity. Every village had its rhythm: sowing, harvesting, preserving, rationing. Knowledge wasn't stored online. It was passed down, hand to hand, seed to soil. A child knew when to dig for roots, how to dry beans, when the barley should be milled. Families didn't stock pantries. They were the pantry. There was no one system. There were thousands, decentralized, seasonal, resilient. If a crop failed in one field, others adapted. Communities absorbed the shock because they understood the system, and they were the system. Now zoom out to today. Our food comes from invisible places. It travels thousands of miles. It relies on oil, logistics, refrigeration, and fragile economics. A shipping delay in one country can empty shelves in another. Supermarkets carry abundance, but only if every link in the chain holds. This isn't resilience. It's illusion. We've optimized for convenience, not collapse. We've forgotten how to grow, how to store, how to survive without pre-cut fruit and expiration dates. Our ancestors could lose a harvest and rebuild. Could we? This week has revealed more than hunger. It's revealed a quiet, dangerous truth. We've traded self-reliance for comfort and memory for efficiency. And yet, all is not lost. That hard bread, it still teaches. Those boiled leeks, they still nourish. The forgotten knowledge of fermentation, of crop rotation, of seasonal eating. It's still there, buried under centuries of convenience, waiting to be remembered. This isn't a call to return to the past. It's a call to learn from it. Because if the system stopped today, if the truck stopped rolling, the power cut out, the shelves went bare, who would you turn to? A YouTube recipe? A dehydrated meal kit? Or would you wish you'd listened to your great-grandmother, your grandfather, your ancestors who knew how to survive when survival wasn't a choice? Could you feed yourself without the system? Could your ancestors teach you how? Food isn't just what keeps us alive. It's what connects us to the land, to each other, to time itself. And if we want to build a future that endures, we may need to eat like the past just long enough to remember what it takes to survive.